everyone to our February webinar with NOSA Foundation. We're so happy to be here and talking about this topic of the treasure inside, because we truly believe, Connie and I truly believe, that God has created all of us with a purpose and with value. And too often it's easier to see the value in others and not see it in ourselves. And so, especially in this month of February, the love month, we just wanted to cover this topic. And because in this month, we normally focus on loving others. But I think that in this season that we need to start focusing on loving ourselves. And that's loving our whole selves, including the parts that we perceive as maybe failures or how we don't measure up. And so I thank Connie for being with us tonight. She's going to share from her heart. And here we go.
Thank you, Laura. So tonight we're going to be talking about the treasure inside. And I think a lot of the times that sometimes we're blinded to our own value just by the things that externally go on around us and things that we're experiencing. And so tonight I just wanted to touch on a couple of things that really impact us in sometimes not so great ways. And so we're going to get started. One of the biggest things that impacted my value in a negative way is failure, like Laura was talking about. And it almost seemed like every time I had dreams or goals to achieve, every time I started to make a dent in it, then I would fail. And then I would feel like a failure. Even though I had some successes, it wasn't enough for me not to see the failure. And I think sometimes we're just so focused on the negative in our culture that sometimes we lose sight of those positive things that are going on in our lives, and that we have those positive things to hold on to. And we're just focused in on that one negative thing. And I like this analogy, so I'm going to share it. There was this teacher, it was a regular elementary school math teacher, and he's writing the multiplication tables on the board, and the kids are copying them down. And he writes 9 times 0 equals 0, 9 times 1 equals 9, 9 times 2, and he gets them all right until he gets to 9 times 10, or no, 9 times 9. And he wrote it wrong. He wrote 18 instead of 81, and all the kids start laughing. And he's like, what's wrong? Why are you all laughing? And they're all like, oh, you got that one wrong. And he's like, you failed to recognize that I got the other 9 right. And you're focused on the one that I got wrong. And it's such a clear example of how we can zone in on the one negative thing. There can be so many other positive things, but that is where our focus goes. And I think just highlighting that and keeping that at the forefront of our mind can help us in those times when we experience what we can perceive as a failure, even if it's not one, or a true failure, and see it in a different light. So I'm going to share a story from my life. When I was in BC, I was working for a childcare program. And while I was working there, my boss, she was always wants things the right way and wants them the best they can be. And so my first attempt at almost everything was a failure. And it's because it wasn't up to what she needed it to be. And so every time she would say what was good with it, what wasn't good. And I would go back to the drawing board, present it again. Usually the second one was still a failure. And so in my eyes, I started seeing my job as this complete failure. She saw me as a success because I always got eventually what she was looking for. And it was only 3 or 4 times, sometimes I'd have to do it. But she was just so excited I could actually get what her vision was done. But in my eyes, I was always a failure. And I was starting to really get down on myself and think I wasn't good enough for my job. And then it was starting to infect other areas of my life. So I started doubting how good I was as a wife, and it started impacting even how I viewed myself in my friendships. And it was it's amazing how quickly it snowballs. And for me, I started feeling like I just wasn't good enough for anything. And our pastor decided that he was going to call a meeting of all the leadership of the church. And he's like, I know that we're the leadership of the church, and a lot of times the leadership isn't open about the struggles they're facing, but we all have struggles and we all need to walk through them together. So I'm going to open up the floor and we're going to go around the table and everyone's going to share what they're currently struggling with. So they're going around and people are being somewhat superficial until it hit me. And I really felt like God wanted me to share that I was struggling with feeling like I was not good enough. And as difficult as this was, I knew I had to do it. And so here I was sitting in this room full of leaders in this church. And I told them, I just don't feel like I'm good enough. I feel like I'm failing in every area of my life. And they're like, whoa, right? And so after I said that, 2 more people chimed in and said they felt the same way. And I was like, I'm not alone. Are you kidding me? I'm not alone. And so when we prayed specifically into that. And I'm sure there were other people there that felt the same way, but didn't feel safe in sharing. But that's besides the point. The point is I wasn't alone and I wasn't a failure and I was valuable. But every time I failed, it chipped away at the value I saw in myself, to the point where I thought I wasn't enough anymore. And as we were being prayed over, God gave me this vision of myself. And I'm going to touch more about that later. But I wanted to touch on right now just like how failure impacts us. So when I saw this, I thought it was so key to what I'm talking about tonight. Because a lot of times when we think of success or failure, we think of them as opposites, but that's not true. What usually failure is a step before our success, as long as we keep trying. The only time that failure is the opposite of success is if we fail to keep trying, if we give up. But when we keep going, we can course correct and then make the necessary changes to make that a success, just like I did with my boss. Every time she brought it back to me and said, this is what was great, this is what's not, I was able to make those changes and give it back. And it was so much better. And it ended up being exactly what she wanted, and sometimes even better. So those ended up being successes. Each failure was a step on the road to my success. And when we change the way we view it, all of a sudden, those failures don't chip away at our value anymore, because we know we're just on the road to something better. So this is the way I view it, like little stepping stones in a pathway, that failures are simply the stepping stones in the path to our success. And failure is success in progress, is what Albert Einstein used to say. And let's face it, he's a pretty smart guy. So I think he knows what he's talking about. So if he says failure is success in progress, then obviously we should at least listen to that, because he's a pretty smart dude. And a lot of where we see our success or failures comes from our expectations. So a lot of times when we have expectations, if they're something that's unrealistic, we can fail to meet them, right? So if they're and if we're constantly failing at them, then that will negatively impact the way we view ourselves. And these expectations can also cause us to be hyper focused on results rather than the overall picture, the big picture. So like for me, I was so focused on each individual task that she had put before me, I didn't see the big picture. The big picture was her end vision of what she wanted that project to be. It wasn't each step of the way, but my expectation was that I would present it perfectly first time around. So my expectation zeroed in on every failure, whereas her view of the end goal actually God made her happy every step of the way, even though I looked at myself as a failure. So what I have done for myself as a result is I've called it shelving my expectations. So instead of putting expectations on myself in task form, I create goals and I try to make them as achievable as possible. I look at what I've been able to do in the past and I see what I can actually accomplish. And I do it with this bigger idea in mind. So when I did my goals for this year, I looked at where I want to be at the end of the year. Who do I want to be at the end of the year? What do I want to have achieved at the end of this year? And I based my goals on that and what I knew I could do. And so because of that, I feel like I'm going to have more success this year than I did last year, because I took into account my missteps from last year as well. And I look at each of those steps as a way of increasing like my ability to achieve those things and grow myself and become an even stronger person with even more value that I see in myself. And through that, it increases my confidence. It increases like the love I have for myself. It increases my compassion for myself. But when I'm stuck in the expectation hamster wheel, as I call it, then I'm constantly trying to achieve things. And it's all about one task at a time and what that result will be. And it's not about the journey. So this is what I like to do. I like to shelf expectation, which then ends up typically shelving my failure, because then I don't look at failure as failures anymore. If I look at them in terms of my goals, if I don't meet my goal one week, that means, okay, my big picture is that I want to finish my book by the end of the year and have it published by a certain date. So if I can't meet this goal this week, what can I do next week to ensure that I can achieve success? What can I change in my goal setting? Maybe my goals are too unrealistic. And it helps me feel good about myself, especially when I can meet those goals. Then I'm like excited to keep going. I'm excited to keep moving forward and I don't get stuck. And as a result, I also shelf perfection, because I always find that if I'm trying to live up to expectation, I'm like in that perfection mode. Everything has to be perfect the first time around. Otherwise I failed. Otherwise I missed the mark. I just don't measure up. But when I look at it in the terms of goals and my bigger picture, it's completely different. It's not about perfection anymore. It's about, okay, how can I get better? How can I progress? How can I find excellence? And it changes everything. So when I saw this picture, I was like, oh, this is so perfect, because every bulb is created to provide light, but not every bulb is obviously created equal. You're not going to put an LED light in the lamp beside your bed. You're just not going to do that, because you're not going to be able to have a restful time reading in bed with that bright of light shining down. And likewise, you're not going to put a little tiny blue light as your daytime outdoor light. You're not going to do that, or your nighttime outdoor light, I should say. You're not going to do that because it's not going to provide enough light for anything that you need to accomplish outside. So in the way that each type of bulb has been produced for a specific purpose, so each of us have been designed with a specific purpose. And so many times we get caught up in, oh, what is that person doing? Oh, what is that person doing? We lose sight of the fact that we're a different type of bulb. We're a different person. We're not meant to do what they're doing. And likewise, pottery is the same thing. So you can have like plates, you can have bowls, you can have cups, you can have water pitchers, you can have vases, all of these different types of pottery, but they're not all used for the same thing. You know, you're not going to put like I said on here, you're not going to put water and flowers in a lamp. No, you're going to put a candle in the pottery lamp. You don't use them for the purposes that are not meant for. And I think sometimes we lose sight of the fact that we all have our unique purpose. We weren't designed to be someone else. We were designed to be who we are. And as a result, we are perfectly designed for what we're supposed to do. So instead of trying to measure ourselves up against other people, all we need to do is do what we're supposed to do and do it well. And in this progression of things, there's times when we feel like failures, or we feel like we've missed the mark, or we feel not unworthy, or we feel not valuable. And instead of reaching out, we hide. And we keep the key close, and we just sit there inside and keep it all inside and don't share it. I would challenge you, if you're in this position, don't stay there, because the most valuable thing we have is each other. Walking through a lot of the stuff that I have needed Laura. Like, me and Laura have kind of this accountability relationship that we've got going on for over 2 years now. And I wouldn't trade it for the world, because when she's going through stuff, I help walk her through it. When I'm going through stuff, she helps me walk through it. And it means that I don't keep this box locked. I open it for her, and I let her help me, because God uses her huge in my life. And if I kept that box closed, I would not be where I am today. I will tell you that. And I'm just so thankful that she is someone that I can trust and reach out to like that. And if you don't have someone like that, you need to find someone like that, whoever they may be. And I'm going to go back to that story that I was telling at the beginning. During that time of prayer, God put on my heart that he showed me a picture of him at a pottery wheel, and he was creating this beautiful piece of pottery, and it was his greatest masterpiece. And for me, I realized that he was making me. And a lot of things struck me as he was making it. Before he ever sat down, he had a plan. He had the exact thing in mind that he wanted to make. And he had everything that he needed, the right amount of clay, all the tools he needed to make each ridge, everything. And as a result, he knew everything he was going to do with me before he ever started. And that's a powerful thought. And out of that vision and the things that he told me that day, I wrote this poem. And I really wanted to share this today, because I want you to get a picture of the intention and preparation and masterful work that he put into you. He had a perfect plan when he created you. And my poem is called The Treasure Inside. The master's hands clasp the cold clay. He gently places it on the table. The wheel starts spinning. His wet hands ready as the process begins. Once formless, the lump starts to take form under the skillful hands of the master. Each movement allowing a new form to take shape. Each shape thought out and planned before the master began. The pottery once formed must be fired. The fire is not meant for harm, but to solidify the master's work. The firing is harsh, but necessary, solidly securing each purpose in place, each imperfection, each nuance, each unique quality planned to the greatest detail. While cooling, rest is found. In this rest, the pot is strengthened. Through this strength, it will not be shattered. Once complete, the pot emerges, lacking nothing. The master carefully examines the masterpiece. his masterful plan fully achieved, joy fills the workshop as a smile comes to his face. These words ring out, "It is finished. It is good," displaying the splendor of the master's hand. Uncertainty crowds in as the master fades. Each step feeling the distance more and more, yet a warm glow comes from within. His glory consumes the inside of the pot, filling every crack, every imperfection, every void. The light visible for all to see, revealing the true nature of the master. The treasure captured and contained, rest overwhelms as trust is restored, fulfilled and perfectly at peace. Home has been found. The master's plan is perfect. Each one has a purpose of their very own, each one unique, special, one of a kind, each one with a treasure inside. And the words that God spoke to me as he was showing me this vision was that I'm worthy because he chose me. I will always be good enough because I trusted his sacrifice for me, and that I was his precious child, and that I will always be good enough because of who I am. Not what I've done, but who I am. When you doubt that you're good enough, let those truths ring out in your heart and your mind, because God chose you too. He gave his only son for you, and he adopted you as his child. Believe the truth and cling to it, and let those old limiting beliefs go. God's love for you speaks volumes about your worth. The creator of the universe loved you enough to choose you for his very own. This is not a small thing. Embrace it. Allow it to penetrate through every belief that is contrary, through every storm. Let it go through every single thing spoken against you. Let it break every wall that has built itself up, and let it set you free from every stronghold that has ever kept you captive. It's time for that treasure within to shine brighter than it's ever done before. The world needs to know there's a hope. There is hope. Each person needs to know the value that they have. There is not a single pot that the potter created that was set aside in my vision. Each one was treasured and precious. For a long time of my life, I struggled to believe that this was true. But in that moment, I could not deny what I had seen and what I heard him say to me. And it broke something in me. And ever since, I have known I am enough. And every one of us is. Let me just gather myself for a second. Okay. In 1 Corinthians 4:7, it says, "We now have this light shining in our hearts, but we ourselves are like fragile clay jars containing this great treasure. This makes it clear that the great power is from God and not from ourselves." You are so precious to God. Just like this little child is precious to this father, so we are precious to our Father. So now the question becomes, we all have a treasure inside of us. What are we going to do with it? Are we going to hide it away and keep it for ourselves? Remember the box? This is the box from earlier in the sand. Or are we going to share it with others? In Matthew 5, verse 14 to 15, it says, "You are the light of the world, like a city on a hilltop that cannot be hidden. No one lights a lamp and then puts it under a basket. Instead, a lamp is placed on a stand where it gives light to everyone in the house." And God has given us this treasure inside, not so that we could hide it for ourselves and keep it inside, but so that we can share it with the world. And the light isn't just him, it's everything that he has created within us. We cannot keep that to ourselves. We have to share it. That's why he created us the way he has. So we've gone to our activation today. And today I just want us to focus on how God sees us, because I believe for me that how I'm truly seeing how God sees me changed so much in how I look at how valuable I am and how treasured I am and how important I am to this world. And God sees each one of us as precious and has a specific purpose for us, whether we recognize it or not. And for those, so I have two different ones. So there may be some of you who are struggling to believe that you're precious to God, even after everything that I've said. And that's okay, because there's a reason why you're here. And I want you to take the next 5 minutes to ask God to show you how he sees you. And for those who already believe you're precious to God, well, first off, this is an opportunity to thank him that he calls you precious, that he considers you special, that he treasures you. And then take the rest of the time to ask him to reveal it to you in an even deeper way. Because I don't know about you, but getting to know how much he loves me more and more daily has helped me walk in more and more confidence in who I am and who he created me to be. And it has given me so much assurance in myself and the giftings that he's given me. So there's so much that even us can get from just taking a few minutes like that. So the 4 keys to remember from today is: failure is simply a stepping stone on the way to success. Don't let it impact the way you view yourself. Live your life by setting realistic goals rather than trying to live up to expectations on constantly not measuring up. You have a unique purpose that is specifically for you and you alone. No one else can offer that to the world, only you. And you are indescribably precious to God. He designed you intricately, and he knows everything you have ever experienced and everything the future holds. And that one is really important to remember, because I think sometimes we get stuck in just our view of what we've experienced, but God knows who we are to become. And so it's almost exciting sometimes when he starts sharing his heart with us, because he sees things we have yet to see. And then this quote from Mel Robbins really says it quite nicely. There will always be someone who can't see your worth. Don't let it be you. And I think it's so important that we realize how important we are, with how valuable we are, how worthy we are. God chose us for a purpose. And so I just wanted to remind you about next month. Our webinar series continues, and it's called Unearthing Your True Self. And it's about rediscovering our identity. So these kind of have worked in tandem with each other, and they kind of go into one another. And so next month, we're going to be talking more in depth about identity and more about like how to really explore who we are in like all sorts of different facets. So I'm really looking forward to that one, and I hope you guys can make it. And then this next week, I'm putting on what I call a workshop experience, but really it's a challenge. But I'm adding a VIP for free, which is basically the second hour of discussion with question and answer time. So it's from 1 till 3 in the afternoon. So I know a lot of people can't make it, but if it was something that, it's called the Love Factor, and it's based on themes from my book. So if you are interested, you're more than welcome to register. I'll send out the link in the notes that I sent out tonight. And there will be, if you can't make it from 1 to 3, that's fine. If you register, there will be replays of the workshop portion of each day. They'll be available on the Facebook page or in the Facebook group that I have for all of those who are registered. And if you have any questions about that, I can go over that before we go today. And Laura, did you want to talk about our podcast or?
So for those of you who don't know yet, Connie and I have launched a podcast. And it's funny because God has put this on my heart for about 8 months. And at first I was like, huh, me, a podcast? What? I don't know about that. And but as we got, as we started talking about it, we started, just really talking about the whole point behind it and why we wanted to do this. Just something kind of got ignited in me, and I realized that, God has put a lot inside of me, and I have been called to share it. And so I just wanted to create a new avenue to share the similar content, but on a different avenue. And so, our themes for the podcast kind of match our webinar themes, but at the same time, we go a little bit deeper and we're a little bit more personal, and it's almost like just a conversation style. And it's just been so fun to do this with Connie. And it's funny because I've even listened back to them as, making sure they're ready to be posted and whatnot. And I'm like, I've said to Connie, wow, these are awesome. We're really good at this. Because I really enjoyed them. Even listening to myself, I'm like, I get blessed by it. And so if you like podcasts and you like listening on the go, then I would encourage you to check it out because it is actually pretty fun. And we do talk about these topics, but we talk about it in a different way. And it just is really cool. And so I invite you to check it out, where you can see it on Spotify, or you can also listen to it on iHeartRadio on our website, and also on the Anchor.fm website as well. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that, I think. So love for you to check it out.